She's the youngest, most powerful CEO in the city. Everyone thinks she has it all. But behind closed doors, she has a secret longing. She wants a baby. And then she asks him, a single dad, the one man she trusts the most. His response: "I'm going to be a father?" What happens next will change their lives forever. Stay tuned, because this is not just a story. It's an emotional journey you can feel in your heart. The night city glowed outside Ayla Raymond's office windows, but inside, everything felt painfully dim. She stood alone, fingers pressed against the cold glass of her desk, trying to quiet the tremor inside her chest. For years she had built her empire brick by brick, sacrificing friendships, sleep, and her own heart in the process. She was the youngest CEO in her company's history, worshipped by some, feared by others, and respected by all. But none of them knew how empty she felt whenever she went home to her silent penthouse. None of them saw the way her eyes lingered on families passing by on the street. None of them heard the doctor's voice echoing in her thoughts. "If you want a baby, your chances are decreasing fast." Those words had shaken something in her, something she had buried under ambition and pride. Tonight, for the first time in a decade, Ayla whispered a truth she had never admitted. "I don't want love," she murmured to herself. "I just want a baby." She didn't want the drama of relationships or the heartbreak she had watched others endure. She simply wanted someone to call her mother, someone to hold, someone who belonged to her not because of power but because of love. Across the city, Ethan Cole was rushing through school hallways, his coat barely hanging on his arm as he lifted his sick daughter, Mia, into his arms. Her small body curled against him, her warmth radiating through his chest as she whispered, "Daddy, my head hurts." He soothed her gently, promising she would feel better soon. Being a single father had forced him to grow up fast, to work harder than most, to love deeper than most men ever had to. He had learned to cook, braid hair, pack lunches, and survive heartbreak. His ex had left him when Mia was 6 months old, telling him she wanted a better life. He never forgot those words. Still, he never complained. His daughter was his entire world, and everything he did was for her. The next morning, Ethan walked into work exhausted but determined. He worked at Ayla's company, not in a high position, but as a talented designer tucked away in a quiet corner. He was respected for his creativity, though most people barely knew his name. So when he received a sudden request for a private meeting with Ayla Raymond herself, he almost thought it was a mistake. His co-workers stared at him as if he'd been summoned to meet a queen. He walked toward the top-floor office with a mixture of fear and confusion. Ayla watched him enter. His shirt sleeves were slightly rolled, his hair messy from rushing, but his eyes were warm, gentle in a way she hadn't expected. "Mr. Cole," she began, surprising herself with how nervous she sounded. "Please sit." Ethan sat cautiously, holding his sketchbook like a shield. And then she said the words that would change both of their lives. "I want a baby," she said quietly. "And I want your help." Ethan blinked twice. He actually thought he misheard her. "I'm sorry, you want what?" She took a deep breath, forcing her voice not to shake. "I don't want a relationship. I don't want a marriage. I just want a child. And after observing you these past months, I realized you're the kind of parent I want my child to have. Responsible, caring, devoted." He stared at her, completely frozen. The room felt too small, too quiet. "You want me to be the father?" She nodded once firmly. Ethan's world tilted. Memories of his past flooded him. The abandoned love, the nights of crying baby Mia, the fear of not being enough. Why him? Why would a woman like Ayla choose someone like him? But then he remembered how his daughter hugged him this morning before he left, whispering, "You're the best daddy." Maybe Ayla saw what others didn't. He swallowed hard. "Are you sure you want this?" She looked at him with an honesty she rarely showed. "I'm sure about wanting a child. As for the rest, I'm terrified. But yes, I'm asking you." The silence stretched, thick with emotions neither had expected. Ethan finally exhaled. "If we do this, it has to be with respect, and clarity, and honesty." She nodded immediately. "Agreed." And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A fragile beginning neither could name. Over the next days, they met privately to discuss the process. No romance. No expectations. Just co-parenting. But every time they spoke, their conversations grew warmer. Ayla found herself laughing at Ethan's small jokes, mesmerized by the softness he carried despite his hardships. Ethan found himself admiring her vulnerability, hidden beneath her strength. Mia took to Ayla instantly, hugging her legs and calling her Ayla Auntie. Without hesitation they had entered an agreement of practicality, but something emotional was creeping in quietly, gently, and dangerously. Neither was ready for it. Neither could deny it. Both were stepping into something far greater than an arrangement. And destiny had only begun to unfold. As the months passed, the agreement between Ayla and Ethan slowly began to transform into something neither of them could control. What started as a contract built on logic began to gain an emotional weight they never intended. Ayla found herself looking forward to every appointment, every conversation, every shared moment with Ethan and his daughter. And Ethan, despite his attempts to keep distance, felt his heart drifting toward her warmth, her unexpected softness, and the quiet way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. The first storm hit unexpectedly. Photos of Ayla and Ethan leaving a fertility clinic were leaked by someone on the board. Overnight, the internet exploded with rumors. Headlines mocked her, questioned her character, questioned his intentions. People labeled Ethan as someone seeking to climb the ladder through scandal. Others accused Ayla of buying a father for her child. Ethan sat at home that night scrolling through the hateful comments, feeling a familiar sting in his chest, the sting of being judged as not good enough. Mia tugged his shirt, confused by the tension in the room, but he forced a smile to keep her from worrying. Meanwhile, Ayla stood in front of her mirror, her reflection as strong as always, but her heart trembling. She realized Ethan would be hurting more than she was. People expected Ayla to be cold, rigid, calculated. But Ethan? He was gentle. He loved quietly. And now the world was attacking him because of her decision. For the first time, she felt responsible for someone's emotional pain. And it unsettled her deeply. The next morning she made a decision. When she stepped in front of flashing cameras, reporters shouting, shareholders glaring, and journalists ready to twist every word, she spoke with a strength that came straight from her heart. She declared that Ethan had done nothing wrong, that he was not a scandal, that she chose him because she wanted a father for her child who had qualities money couldn't buy: kindness, patience, gentleness, and real devotion. Silence filled the room after her speech, but somewhere in the crowd, Ethan watched from a distance, chest tight with emotion. No one had ever defended him so openly, so fiercely. Still, the damage had been done. Ethan began to quietly pull back, attending meetings less, avoiding personal conversations, avoiding Ayla's eyes. She felt the distance growing, and it pierced her in ways she never expected. She tried to focus on her work, on the pregnancy, on staying strong, but the silence between them weighed heavily. Finally, one evening after work, she went to his apartment. Ethan opened the door, surprised, with little Mia holding a crayon in her hand and looking up curiously. Ayla stepped inside slowly. "Why are you avoiding me?" she asked, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not avoiding you. I'm just trying not to complicate anything." She took a step closer. "You already did," she whispered. "The moment you agreed to help me, things changed." Ethan looked down, torn. He confessed quietly that he feared she would eventually realize he wasn't enough, that she would one day regret choosing him. He told her about his past, about the woman who had once told him he was too ordinary, too simple, not worthy of her world. Ayla felt something inside her break. She cupped his face gently, forcing him to look into her eyes. "You are enough," she said shakily. "You're more than enough. You are the best father I have ever seen. And you are the first person who has ever made me feel safe." Ethan's breath trembled, and for the first time, he allowed her words to settle into his heart. But life wasn't done testing them. 8 months into the pregnancy, Ayla collapsed during a board meeting. Chaos erupted as she was rushed to the hospital. Ethan, upon hearing the news, sprinted across the city with Mia in his arms, praying with every breath that she would be okay. When he reached the hospital room, doctors were surrounding her. She was pale, barely conscious, whispering his name. He took her hand, his voice breaking. "Stay with me," he pleaded. "Stay with us." She looked at him with weak eyes filled with fear. "Ethan, if something happens, promise you'll take care of the baby." He shook his head desperately. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. We're supposed to do this together." His tears fell onto her hand, and something about that touch kept her fighting, kept her awake, kept her breathing. Hours later, the sound of a newborn's cry filled the room. Their baby boy arrived healthy but tiny, fragile and breathtakingly perfect. Ethan held him first, tears streaming down his face as Mia peeked over his arm, whispering, "Is that my brother?" Ayla opened her eyes, exhausted but alive, and when she saw them, Ethan holding her child, Mia smiling, the baby nestled between them, she knew her life had changed forever. She wasn't just a CONM anymore. She was a mother. She was a woman loved in ways she never expected. She had a family, not created by romance or chance, but created by brave decisions, shared pain, deep compassion, and the quiet, unstoppable pull between two people who were never supposed to fall for each other, yet did. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share. Your support means everything. Subscribe, like, share, and stay with us for more heart-touching stories. Follow us, subscribe now, and share this video with your loved ones.